Graffiti, by its very nature, finds itself on many different surfaces. And if graffiti written on public property has a tendency to piss off the general public, it's even more so when it's done on private property. And in the course of doing these videos over the last couple of years, this issue of taggers tagging on private property is something that comes up constantly. And in regards to this, sometimes people in the comments ask me, why did you want to mess up your neighborhood so bad? And to this, I would ask a question of my own, which is, what makes you think my neighborhood wasn't messed up already? I grew up on Cortlandt Avenue in San Francisco's Bernal Heights neighborhood. And in 2025, this is a fairly nice area, but that wasn't always the case, and it definitely wasn't the case when I was a kid. And let me just give you a quick breakdown of the things I would see in my neighborhood starting at the age of about 4 or 5 years old. I could go outside and see people get robbed in broad daylight like it was legal. I would hear shots go off from time to time, and especially in the late 80s and early 90s, the crack epidemic was raging. And it was this issue that impacted my life the most during this time. The year that I started elementary school, somebody got their life taken right across the street from my elementary school by somebody selling dope. And I could see my neighbors walking around completely bugged out. I could see one of my best friend's moms walking up and down the street, screaming, fiending, looking for a dollar, looking for a rock. And there were places I couldn't go because of the activity going on there. And these places included structures and areas specifically for children. Top of the list was the Bernal Heights Library, and I was told specifically to avoid this place and not go into that playground. And that's because gang members kicked it there from time to time, people were definitely selling rocks there, and there was hypodermic needles in the sand there, and I could step on one of those without even knowing it, or I could catch one of the bullets that were being let off on Moultrie Street by the people that were selling dope. And did seeing some graffiti around the way on a pole, on a bus stop, wherever, make any of these issues any worse? It absolutely didn't, and all it was just some letters on a wall or on a bus stop, and it didn't impact my life in any way. And some of you guys might be saying, well, Connor, you might feel differently if people were tagging on your house. To which I'll reply, people stayed tagging on my house, and in the 90s alone, I probably had my house hit up over a dozen times. And there's a couple of reasons why fools might have been tagging my house up so much. One is location. I lived right in front of a bus stop, and fools were already bus hopping by the time I was 4 or 5 years old, so taggers would be going all over the city, and if they got off the bus right in front of my house, they might be inclined to hit it up. And that's also because of the fence that we had on my house. In particular, this fence had a fairly long, smooth concrete surface. And I didn't see fools use too many markers on it, they mostly just used spray paint, but that kind of area was perfect for some hand styles, and sure enough, it seemed like every couple of months, there would be something new in this space that seemed optimal for tagging. And when it came to how I felt about seeing a new tag on my house, it didn't really bother me all that much. Like I said, the neighborhood had a lot of very serious things to worry about, and some letters on my fence weren't gonna hurt me in any way. But also, my family wasn't gonna have to come out of pocket to do something about the graff. We rented our place, but even our landlord wasn't responsible for it either. The city would come out maybe a couple of days after it went up, or they just spot it on their own and just buff it. And in seeing this play out multiple times, not one of these times did this ever bother me. And I can say that this mentality of mine of some graff being on my house not really bothering me definitely transferred over to it not really bothering me when I would hit up on somebody else's house. I knew that at the end of the day, anything I hit up was ultimately gonna get buffed. And so much of the city at that time was already covered in graff that I didn't really think too much about putting up some more myself. Although I can say in the back of my head, I always had this feeling that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. But like many teenagers, I wouldn't listen to that voice in the back of my head. I would listen to the voice in the front of my head that told me to keep bombing. But even with this in mind, there were still some things to me that were off limits. Hitting up a house window with the scriber seemed really messed up to me, and I absolutely never did that. The same can be said about hitting up somebody's car or personal vehicle. I wasn't tagging bicycles, I wasn't tagging scooters or motorcycles, and those things always got left alone. And even other people around me who were doing some kind of foul stuff would get on your case if you did something like that. But when it came to hitting up houses, there was one type of graffiti that didn't get buffed by the city, and as such, it ran the longest. And this would be duster shots, licking your fingers and hitting up with the dust on somebody's house. And a house on my block stayed getting hit up with some duster shots, and some of these things ran for months. And I definitely hit up these duster shots as well, especially just walking around, going to and from places. If I saw a dusty garage, I probably hit it up. but it's not something I'm proud of now. And when it comes to my own personal feelings about hitting up private property in 2025, I recommend you not do it. First and foremost, unlike in San Francisco, many people are responsible for taking care of some graff, buffing some graff on their property. And I believe in screwing over working people as little as possible, and adding another burden to a working person's life is something that's really foul to me. But I also recognize how dangerous it can be going and hitting up on some private property. San Francisco's bombing king, Tai One, lost his life doing just this. And there's a lot of very trigger-happy people in this country. People own a ton of firearms, and there's people that just sit around and fantasize being able to blast somebody legally because they stepped onto their property. And if the person that steps onto their property is a graffiti writer, you can expect that graffiti writer to be villainized, and many people will say that they deserved whatever happened to them, including losing their life. And really, at the end of the day, there's so many spaces out there, but I just recommend leaving people's houses and private property alone.